Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the awards contender. The 97th Academy Awards have concluded. So now I can talk about the show, talk about the winners, right? The next few days I'll have a variety of videos talking about why Mikey Madison won, what were the best Oscar nominations of the year, what were the worst. Yes, there are going to be some worst top 10 videos coming up here. And I thought for this one today, something I haven't done the last 2 years, I thought I would talk about the most memorable moments from the 97th Academy Awards, the top 10 best moments, and the top 10 worst moments. Let's get into it. I'll start with worst, and then go to best, and go back and forth all the way to my number one choices. Number 10 worst, I would say, was the lack of surprises. This happens almost every year at the Oscars, I would say, but it does get kind of dull as the ceremony goes on, and it's the exact people and films that we thought were going to win do end up winning, like in the supporting acting categories, like in most of the technical categories. I love when we get 2 or 3 huge surprises nobody was expecting. And it doesn't happen enough, I found myself getting a little bored in the second half of the Oscars this year. And part of it was, pretty much every win we could see coming from a mile away. So I do think the show needed a couple more surprises to really make it special. The number 10 best moment, I would say, was June Squibb. I gotta throw June Squibb on here because she made me laugh big time when she came out and presented with Scarlett Johansson and had that joke about Bill Skarsgård. When she said, "This is not June Squibb, this is Bill Skarsgård as June Squibb." June Squibb is at home right now just having a lovely evening. I mean, that was a big laugh. She is so funny, and I think Johansson just directed June Squibb in a film, which is probably coming out later this year, so let's all keep our eyes on Squibb right now. She was talked about as an awards contender for Thelma, the last few months. Maybe this new film she's making with Johansson will have her play a bigger role next award season. Number 9 worst was Ben Stiller presenting Best Production Design. I've never been a big fan of all of the different sketches and bits that Stiller does at the Oscars. What was that year he came out as he was playing Joaquin Phoenix from that era where we didn't know that Phoenix was doing a bits. But I remember Stiller came out and did that, and it was kind of obvious. That year he came out playing a character from Avatar. It just seems like Ben Stiller can't just, present a category. He has to throw in, his own humor and things. And that's good to an extent. But the bit with production design, just seeing the top of his body and certain things, with the stage, I didn't think that worked at all. And I was like, okay, let's hurry this up. Let's get to production design winning for Wicked. Number 9 best, I would say, was that best documentary feature win for No Other Land. It was a very political speech, but an important one that, had the room buzzing, to be sure. I mean, we didn't get too many memorable speeches at the Oscars this year. Even in the acting categories, Culkin was kind of fun, and Saldana mentioning the historic nature of her win, that was great. But I don't know, some of those top wins, I didn't get a whole lot out of some of those speeches. But that speech for No Other Land winning documentary feature, it was a great one, maybe the best of the night. Number 8 worst was the In Memoriam snubs. I have something else to say about the In Memoriam later in this video. But yeah, this happens pretty much every year, right? There's a few snubs where it's we're having a 2-3 minute segment of the In Memoriam celebrating all of the great artists we lost in the last year. And because of the time constraints, I get it. We can't necessarily show everybody. I think at the end now, there's a link that you can go on, go online and see the full list. But come on, I know it just happened. Michelle Trachtenberg should have been recognized. I mean, she was in some really great films. Elaine Delon, Tony Todd, Olivia Hussey, Shannon Doherty. You know, there were at least 5 or 6 I thought of, like, wow, they didn't make, you know, the In Memoriam at the Oscars this year. I feel like if you're somewhat of a known figure and you've been in some important films, you know, as an actor, like, you should make that list, even if it's brief. Like, we just see you for 2-3 seconds. It's like, why not? Why can't we expand In Memoriam for 30-40 extra seconds, you know? That never makes sense to me year to year when some key figures don't make the In Memoriam lineup. Number 8 best was that moment when Andrew Garfield came out on stage with Goldie Hawn. They presented the 2 animated categories, and Garfield turned to Hawn and said how important she was to his mother, who passed away in recent years. It wasn't overly sentimental, it wasn't maudlin, like, it felt like genuine from the heart. And I got teary-eyed. I got a little teary-eyed in that moment. I'm a huge Andrew Garfield fan, and I love Goldie Hawn. Like, Goldie Hawn has meant a lot to me and my mom, so I did love that moment too. Number 7 worst was Hulu cutting out right before Best Actress. This did not happen to me. I watched it with some friends on ABC, you know, just on cable. But I started hearing, like, in the hours after the ceremony, that people who were watching the Oscars this year on Hulu, because the show went long, you know, on Hulu, like, the Oscars, like, the time frame they had for it, it ran out, and so it just stopped playing for everybody. I guess right before Best Actress, I would have lost my shit. I would have gone insane. I would have been so mad in that moment. If right before Best Actress, like, Hulu cut out and I couldn't watch it live, I would have been devastated. So yeah, that absolutely makes the worst list. Number 7 best was I'm Still Here winning Best International Feature. That was a moment, one of my favorite wins of the night. You know, Emilia Perez, it won Supporting Actress in Song, and I went, you know, Brian, it might just win International Feature too. You know, I was, like, prepared for that to happen, but, you know, Penelope Cruz, like, she was about to say the winner, and I could feel it. I was like, I think she's gonna say I'm Still Here, and it was I'm Still Here. What a great, great win that was. I didn't think the film was gonna take picture, probably not actress. I felt that for weeks. But I thought because of the passion behind I'm Still Here, it could overtake Emilia Perez in International Feature, and it happened. What a great victory. Congratulations, Brazil. Number 6 worst was the Adam Sandler bit near the end of Conan O'Brien's monologue. Like, the very beginning of the Sandler bit was okay. It was amusing, you know. Oh, Adam Sandler didn't dress up, and that was, you know, it was funny for like 10-20 seconds. But then it went on and on and on, and Sandler, like, got up and started walking around and talking and yelling, and I felt like that moment overstayed its welcome. In a monologue, I thought was pretty solid, like, really funny for the most part. You know, the Sandler bit finally ended, and then we got that song and dance with O'Brien where he's like, we're not gonna waste your time tonight, and that part I feel like could be on some worst of lists of the ceremony. But that one actually amused me. I actually kind of like that. But the Sandler piece right before, you know, take it or leave it, I guess. Some people might have liked it more than others. I didn't think it was that great. Number 6 best was the Gene Hackman tribute by Morgan Freeman. Because it happened so recently, I wondered how that was going to affect the In Memoriam segment. I'm like, well, maybe they'll just end with Hackman and that'll be that. But to actually get his former co-star, Morgan Freeman, who made 2 films with him, including Unforgiven, to come out and say some words about the great, like the one and only Gene Hackman. That was fantastic, especially after I had just made my video about Hackman. I did a top 10 performances video, and so I did get a little choked up during that segment. You know, just, I mean, what a career, what a legend Gene Hackman was. I was happy to see the Academy, like, give Hackman a moment there. Not just as part of the In Memoriam for 5 seconds, but actually have, like, an Oscar-winning legend himself, Morgan Freeman, come out, begin the In Memoriam segment by talking about Hackman. That was great. Number 5 worst, I would say, was like 2 of the winners of the El Mal original song Oscar singing at the end of their speech. You know, that like they started singing. And I mean, the amusing part of that was that Jacques Audiard, who is now like an Oscar winner, I guess, because he was part of, you know, creating that El Mal song. He looked like he was trying to like say a few words before the orchestra played off the 3 winners, and he couldn't do it because the other 2 winners in the category just kept going on, and then they started singing, and I was like, okay. I mean, I feel like most people were just like, really, we have to give Emilia Perez anything tonight, you know? Can't it just stay nominated and not win? Like, we had to see it win 2 prizes. Most of us knew that was coming. But like, you know, Saldana having a nice speech, that's great and all, but like, did we have to have that El Mal speech go on and on and on? No. Number 5 best was the celebration, the segments devoted to the costume designers and the cinematographers. I thought that was frickin' awesome. You know, there was talk for a bit there that we would have like 5 previous Oscar winners in the acting categories, like what happened last year, come out and talk a little bit about the acting nominees this year. When everything went down with Carla Sofia Gascon, I think most of us were like, oh, they're not going to do that now. You know, like they're not going to do that. So yeah, I was like, well, we're not going to get that this year, and that's okay. Sometimes just having clips is better. You know, I would say most of the time that's better. But I did really appreciate the Academy taking time to acknowledge the costume designers and cinematographers with having like 5 people come out on stage, say a few words about these incredible artists, have the camera pointed on these people who we almost never get to see, right? And like not just rush to the winner, like take 2-3 minutes, whatever it was, maybe longer, and like actually take in these nominees and the work that they did on these movies. Like they could have done that for the editors, they could have done that for sound and visual effects. I would have been all in. Because usually that format is reserved only for the actors, for the people we know. For the Academy to do that, for the costume designers and the cinematographers, that was super classy and fantastic. Number 4 worst was the lack of clips in the supporting acting presentations. I don't know how you guys felt. I didn't really like Robert Downey Jr. strolling out there and just like, you know, seemingly off the top of his head, just talking about the 5 nominees in supporting actor. And then Da'Vine Joy Randolph in supporting actress did a similar thing. No clips at all, just talking about the 5 nominees. She was clearly looking, you know, at a teleprompter. It was, you know, in plain view, I would say, with Randolph versus Downey Jr., who didn't seem to be just reading, but I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of like a compromise here. We're not going to show clips. We're not going to have 5 previous winners in that category come out. It was kind of like the middle ground of those 2, and I don't know, it was okay, but I didn't love it. I do feel like clips are helpful for people at home who might not have seen every film nominated in that category. Like maybe they don't know what The Apprentice is. Maybe they haven't seen The Brutalist. You know, I think it would be helpful for many viewers to get a clip of Guy Pearce, a clip of Jeremy Strong. So there was that. But then we got to the leading acting categories, and they did show clips. And at first I'm like, well, why are they doing that? Why are they changing it up? Oh, because of Carla Sofia Gascon. Like Emma Stone was not going to stand there and talk about how great Gascon is. You know, like that wasn't going to happen. So that made sense to me, but I felt like it should have been the same all the way through. I feel like it should have been clips for all 4 of the acting presentations, or have it be like where they talk in a more loose manner. Just to have that switch for lead actor and lead actress felt weird. There wasn't a good flow to that. It should have been all clips from the beginning in the supporting acting categories. Number 4 best was the Conan O'Brien opening and monologue. Like everything we got of O'Brien in those opening minutes was pretty spectacular, very funny. I mean, starting with that spoof of The Substance, that had me howling. I was laughing so hard. And then I found out, after the ceremony, that my old friend and roommate, Scott Gardner, directed that segment. He directed the Substance spoof with O'Brien. He had worked on Conan's show many, many years ago. Scott Gardner is a writer-director living in Los Angeles, and he does a lot of sketch comedy, a lot of different kinds of things. And I had no idea until he texted me after the show and said, I directed that spoof of The Substance. I was like, what? I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was just so excited for him. What a moment that was. And that truly was like one of the funniest moments of the show. I mean, even when O'Brien walked out there and had that little back and forth with Demi Moore, who was seated, front row center. And he's like, sorry about that, Demi. And she's like, awkward. That was pretty good. But I mean, Conan O'Brien going back for his shoe, like just digging into her for the shoe. That was pretty good. And knowing my old friend Scott Gardner directed that, like that really lit me up with joy. I was really, really happy for him and happy for that moment. And the monologue itself was very funny. I mean, not all of it landed, and that's always going to be the case in a Oscars monologue. But even though Conan O'Brien, he didn't have a lot of showy moments, I would say, in the second half. I wanted a little bit more of him, like later on. But that monologue was rock solid, very funny. He addressed Carla Sofia Gascon. That was like the elephant in the room. And his two jokes about her were pretty good. Like they were very funny. I adore Conan O'Brien, and I hope he hosts the Oscars again in the years to come. Number 3 worst was no special tribute to David Lynch. Yes, he was in the In Memoriam segment near the end. We had a few seconds, like with a picture of him, and that was great. But I don't know about you guys, I really felt like they were going to do something about David Lynch. 4 Oscar nominations behind him. He also won an honorary Oscar. He's one of the most important filmmakers of the last few decades. And him passing away somewhat recently in January, I thought the Academy was going to do right by him. They didn't need to do like a 10-minute tribute. Like that thing they did with John Hughes in 2010, where multiple actors that he had worked with throughout the 80s and things came out on stage and paid tribute to John Hughes. It didn't need to be that big, but I was like, okay, this is so ridiculous. Isabella Rossellini and Laura Dern are there. Rossellini is wearing blue velvets. You're telling me that we couldn't have a short segment somewhere in the show where Rossellini and Dern could have come up on stage and said a few words about David Lynch? It could have been a minute long, 90 seconds. It didn't have to go on and on and on. I just think, in a ceremony that devoted many, many minutes to what I am choosing as the number 1 worst segments, like we couldn't give David Lynch a moment in that 3.5-hour ceremony, like beyond just the little In Memoriam tribute. I don't know. I was very disappointed there. I was ready to start crying. I was like, if they're going to do something special for Lynch, I'm going to break down, because he is just one of my favorites. If you saw my tribute video to him, I broke down crying at the end of that video, and he means a lot to me. And because he was like a multiple Oscar nominee and made so many important films, I thought that was going to happen. Like Rossellini and Dern and maybe Kyle MacLachlan or Naomi Watts or someone coming out there. Like we get a big, big still of David Lynch on the screen and they say a few words about his legacy. That would have been great. I do think that was a missed Oscar moment this year. Number 3 best was the celebration of Los Angeles firefighters. The firefighters coming out on stage to a giant standing ovation. They delivered some funny jokes. There were 3, right? 3 jokes that the firefighters said, and they worked really well in the room. Conan O'Brien standing there and, just like not even attempting a joke, really. Like he's just like, everyone applaud these people who helped in a time of great crisis in LA last January. That was a necessary moment. It was beautifully done. I am so happy the Academy designated a segment to the LA firefighters. Number 2 worst was Adrien Brody's speech. I'm sorry. I watched it back this morning. I found out that it's like the longest acceptance speech ever. 5 minutes, 40 seconds. Like, that's crazy. It's the longest one ever. And, they started playing him off, and he was like, no. I got more to say. I've been here before, I've done this. It's not my first rodeo. I thought that was a little egotistical, like him being like, I've done this before, this is my second Oscar. That came off as weird. He probably meant it to, like, just to be funny, but it came off a little awkward. And then he made it sound like, as the music quieted down, that he just had, like, one more thing to say, that he would be brief, but then he just kept talking, man. It was like 2-3 minutes. And then eventually, I think we like started to hear the music a little bit, and then he was like, okay, I'm gonna go, but just one more thing, and it didn't come off very well. Like, when I'm thinking about moments of the night I didn't really care for, his win was a great one. I love his performance in The Brutalist, but his speech 22 years ago, after he won for The Pianist, like what he had to say that night was very powerful. And it was, I remember it wasn't brief. Like, he talked for a little bit, but it was great. Like, you could really get a sense of his passion, and everything he was saying in that speech 22 years ago really brought the house down. People were in tears in the audience, and that wasn't the case this year. This time, he just kind of rambled about a lot of different things, and it needed to be tighter. His speech was a little cringe. I'm not alone on this. I've seen a lot of people sharing, in the hours since the ceremony, that his speech should have been a lot shorter. It should have been a little bit more emotional and had more construction to it. It just was like all over the place. 5 minutes and 40 seconds. No, Adrien. No. Number 2 best was the opening with Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. I loved the opening of the show. It was like a tribute to Wicked. It was a tribute to Los Angeles in a way. It was just beautifully done. Like, on a visual level, it looked spectacular. Both Grande and Erivo hit it out of the park, as I knew they would. What powerful voices, and seeing them like in moments alone, like singing solo, and then coming together, and having it open with Over the Rainbow was a masterstroke. Like, Grande singing that really like sent chills down my spine. It was so great. And then having it end with Erivo singing Defying Gravity, it was funny. Like, that segment was so powerful. I'm like, and they're not winning, like, in the acting categories. Like, both Erivo and Grande, the entire season, just went home empty-handed. And they're so great. They're so talented. And they really opened the show beautifully. Like, having the ceremony start with them, with those songs, and then leading into O'Brien's segment with The Substance and his monologue. That was a great first 20 minutes or whatever it was of the 97th Academy Awards. One of the best openings, I would say, we've had in a while. Again, I loved everything with O'Brien, but I really, really loved that opening with Erivo and Grande. All right, and now we get to number 1. What was the number 1 worst moment of the 97th Academy Awards? It was the James Bond tributes. And, it's not like it was poorly produced necessarily. It was okay. I wasn't sitting there rolling my eyes and just like, oh God, this is terrible. I just didn't understand the need for it. Like, there was no James Bond film in the last year. We had 2 James Bond tributes at the Oscars in the last 15 years. There was one in 2013, I think, which was presented by Halle Berry, just like this last time. And that was to celebrate, I think, Skyfall and the 60th anniversary of Bond. And then we had one 3 years ago in 2022. So I'm like, I don't think we need to have another James Bond tribute when there's no need for it. There's nothing really that we're celebrating. I mean, the only Bond news we've had, was that recent news that Amazon had acquired it. But so are we saying goodbye, to the James Bond we know and love? I don't know. It just felt weird, and it went on a long time. I mean, what were there, 3 songs there? And I mean, Margaret Qualley came out and danced, and that was interesting, but I'm like, I don't understand why this is happening when, year after year, we're always trying to find ways to shorten the Oscars. Why would we take time to celebrate James Bond at this moment? It didn't make sense. It brought the show to a screeching halt. And even though like the presentation, the tribute itself was okay, I do think that was the worst moments of the 97th Academy Awards. Sorry. And finally, my choice for the #1 best moments of the ceremony was that Anora near sweep. It didn't fully sweep. It didn't win supporting actor for Yura Borisov, but it won picture, director, actress, original screenplay, and editing. Anora, my favorite film of 2024, which in January, I wondered if it could even win original screenplay. I was like, maybe it wins screenplay. It's not going to win director. That's going to go to Brady Corbet. Picture, maybe, but I don't know. That might be Conclave or something. Actress, because of Demi Moore doing so well early in the season, I was like, it might be Demi Moore, Brian. I don't think Mikey Madison can do it. And editing, like none of us really had that on our radar for Anora. Typically, my favorite film of the year does not win Best Picture at the Oscars. I mean, it happens occasionally. It happened with Moonlight, and it happened with Parasites in the last decade. I think I made a joke with Cody, in one of our videos. I was like, if my favorite film of the year is one word, then it can win. Then it can win picture. And it happened again with Anora. But for it to dominate the way it did, to win 5 prizes, 4 for Sean Baker, who is a director I have adored for years, like Tangerine and The Florida Project and Red Rocket, for him to finally be nominated this year for Anora and to become the first person in history to win 4 prizes in one night at the Oscars for a single film. I mean, that is one for the history books. That is awesome. And for it to happen for Anora, which is just an astonishing film, an indie film, not a big, giant blockbuster, like a small $6 million independent film, that was just really special. I mean, as the hours and days have passed, I am feeling better and better about that Mikey Madison win in Best Actress. It's pretty great. Anora doing as well as it did in all of those wins at the 97th Academy Awards. Just frickin' wow. That is my choice for the #1 best moment at this year's ceremony. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below what were your favorite moments from the 97th Academy Awards, and what were some moments you didn't like so much. I'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.